the whole purpose of what we do is to provide value and solve problems. Like we're in the business of helping people, and I think this, in its essence, is again in a really unfortunate situation, but the overall thing taken away from this is being able to help and provide value in a scenario where it feels, if I was the seller, like the sky was absolutely falling and my world is imploding in. All right, welcome back to the Pursuit of Property podcast. Today, it is just Scott and I sitting across the table out here in the studio. And today, I'm really excited because I'm not even fully filled in on this crazy ass deal breakdown that we're going to do today over on Yale Avenue. Correct me if I'm wrong. So Scott, before I get into what I think is would be kind of a cool way to get into this podcast. How are you doing this morning? Are the juices flowing? Are we ready to have a freaking kick-ass pod?
I'm ready. I woke up at 4 a.m. Mac had gotten sick overnight and defecated all over his crate and made my house stink. That's why I was on the hike this morning, because I was already awake. How about you?
I was not on the hike this morning. I'm rocking and rolling, so this will be a good podcast, dude. So let's set the stage. We're doing a deal breakdown over on a deal that you guys did and completed over on Yale, and I want to set the stage. This was probably, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, 5 weeks ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. Ish.
It wrapped up like right around the time of our race, so late August.
Crap.
Yeah,
so
time
even
flies.
Longer. Damn. Okay. Well, I'm sitting. I'm just chilling at home, and it's later in the evening, probably 6, maybe 5:30, but 6:15, and I get a call from you, which isn't out of the blue, right? We're always hitting each other up, so I answer. I'm like, dude, what's going on? And you go, bro, I can't fill you in on all the details right now, but shit is going crazy. I'm out here at this deal trying to lock up this contract. Oh, wait, the cops just showed up. I got to go. I'll fill you in later. Hang up. And I'm like, oh, shit. I know tomorrow morning when I come in, I am going to get the rundown. So
that was, a Tuesday afternoon?
Yes. Just a random weekday afternoon, man. So, can you tell me a little bit about how the deal came in before we get to how that whole appointment went? Set the stage on where this deal came from and kind of set the stage.
I'm going to set a caveat here at the start. I don't love talking about deals all the time, especially recent deals, because we're often dealing with people having the worst day of their life. And I always consider the fact that person may hear this podcast. And I don't want to make fun of them having a very hard time, but also these kinds of experiences often have comedic moments and often have a lot of drama that is very interesting for people to know about and know how to solve. So that's a caveat. Second caveat is that this whole experience was like a fever dream. It was ridiculous in nature. So I may get some of the details wrong. I will do my absolute best to recite exactly what I remember, but I may have to make some assumptions. So Friday afternoon, this is like the Netflix show, 4 days prior. Friday afternoon, a lead came in from a referral source. It's, somebody that's referred us quite a few deals. Not much on the lead, just pretty much the address. Like, hey, this house seems like it needs work. Give them a call, X, Y, and Z. I'm like, dope. Let's do it. And I just put hot lead. Looking at the address, this is down by Fresno City College, an area that we know well. We know it's worth quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And so we do our normal process. Jade calls our acquisitions manager, sets an appointment. I give her a timeline. I say anytime starting Monday after 10 a.m. She sets it like Monday at lunch. And that's kind of how it started. Like, there was nothing that made me super wary about the deal up and until that point. Monday comes around And it was kind of a hectic morning. You know how Mondays, sometimes you get in and it's like you got a lot of missed emails or a lot of things to do. So I ended up going on this appointment. All I did to prepare was print a contract. That was it. Didn't even look at the contract. I get to the house. I don't even know the seller's name. And I'm told that I'm not meeting the seller. So I'm not really concerned about it. I'm told I'm meeting a family member who's apparently living in the home, maybe causing some issues. That was kind of the context of the phone call earlier in the morning to set the appointment. I show up. I walk up to the person I'm meeting and I go, hey, my name's Scott. I'm supposed to meet you here, at this time to see the house. And he goes, oh, it's funny. Easy to remember. I'm Scott. I'm the owner. And I was like, okay, well, that was easy. Remember his name. And where things started to get wary, because it's not unnormal for a seller to be out front instead of in the house, is he turns to me and goes, I have to tell you something before we walk inside. There's a tenant in there. Right as he says there's a tenant in there, the tenant opens the damn front door and he shuts up, like the seller shuts up, whatever he was about to say, and goes, oh, so-and-so, meet Scott. It's a hard name to remember. I remember that because I was just like, okay, Scott in my head. And we walked through the house. Like, just a normal appointment. The house is beat up. It's big. It's really dilapidated. It's an older home built in the 20s. It was kind of a historic neighborhood. And I mean, I remember walking through it and just being like, damn, this is a really cool house. This would be a really fun project to work on together. And, chatting up the seller. Turns out we both did, Roger Rockas together. We both did, service with our community in similar ways. And the appointment ends up taking like an hour and a half.
And this is around lunchtime.
It's all around lunchtime.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm wrapping up. I'm late for another meeting with Jade, actually. It's my one-on-one with Jade at 1 o'clock. Mm-hmm. So the appointment must have been at 12 because at 1 o'clock I text her, I'm still at this house, hot lead. I'll jump on as soon as I get back. And we're in the backyard looking at the pool that's destroyed, and they're trying to tinker with it. Oh, it was blue a couple days ago. It's green. It has to be the chlorine, whatever. Trying to get this working. And I go, hey, can I take a walkthrough video, right? So I always tell all the students, take photos while you're talking with the seller, do a walkthrough video after to get the layout. Yep. And talk through all the points about the house that maybe not be visible, right? So I'm talking about what I know about, plumbing, electrical, roof, location, anything like smell, sound, stuff that may not be visible in a video. Mm-hmm. Well, I walk out front and I still have the clip of it. I get 4 seconds into the video and I notice that there's a cop car sitting across the street. And I'm like, I had just gotten my first speeding ticket in 5 years. And I'm like, what are the odds that there's a cop sitting right behind my car, parked just outside of a red zone on a street? Like, I was like really nervous it was about me. And then the cop gets out mid-video and goes, hey, Scott. And in my head, I'm like, fuck. I don't know what happened, but I don't know why they're tracking me. He goes, I need to talk to your grandson. Stop the video. I'm like, yo, clearly you've got the wrong Scott. I look like the grandson. And he goes, yeah, no, I don't know if you know who Scott is, but he's the owner. We got word that there's children playing in the backyard. And I'm like, weird. I was just in the backyard. There's no children. And I go, let me go grab them for you. And at this point, the only conversation that I've had privately with Scott was that he had to tell me something. And I'm like, are there fucking kids in like the basement or something? Like what's going on? So I go back and I don't know, put yourself in my shoes. How do you get a seller to leave the tenant to come talk to the owner and that the owner has some reservation about the tenant? What would you have done?
All along a cop sitting out front saying, I need to talk to him. You have no context. It's like, well, hey.
I was like, okay. So I go back and I was like, yo, somebody's here for you. Of course, the tenant immediately was the first one to walk towards the door. And I'm like, oh, shit. Like slow-mo, my vision dilates, like fight or flight gets into effect. Scott walks out there. All of a sudden, tenant turns into Usain Bolt, bolts up the stairs. And, forgot a part. There was a prostitute upstairs. Asleep in the bed. I don't know how many people know me personally. I'm a very devout Catholic, married guy. I did not want to go in that room. And essentially the tenant was like, no, go in there and take a look, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, make sure that she's like covered. I don't want to see anything. I don't want to be a part of any of this. And so he runs upstairs into that room, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if he's scared that he's going to get locked up for something like that. I'm making an assumption, but I'm guessing it was a paid for service.
Yeah.
And this is why I don't like doing podcasts, bro. It's funny to me. Some people are having the worst day of their life. It was kind of funny. All of a sudden, the seller goes out front. I'm doing my walkthrough video. It's not my business to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And next thing I know, I'm done with the video, and I walk back to the entryway, and the cop's inside talking to the seller. Apparently, there had been some kind of incident where a whole bunch of iPads had been stolen from City College, and they had, Find My iPhone on them. And the City College police tracked it back to the house. And so there was a raid on the house for the iPads.
Oh, shit.
And the tenant had been arrested just a week prior. I think that's what the owner was trying to tell me. And so hour and a half goes by because now he has to defuse me on why the house is still valuable, even though I just had a cop show up during the appointment.
Yeah.
So finally I get him to stop talking. I leave. I say, look, I'm going to call you tomorrow. We're going to set an appointment at a remote location, not my office, not your house, not this home. And we're going to talk through everything. But if you want this sold, I will buy it. So Tuesday comes around. I text him in the morning. No response. Text him at noon. No response. So I'm like, okay, maybe he's not that serious after all. I'll call him later this afternoon. All of a sudden, out of the blue, it's like, I don't know, 3:00. Didn't have much on the calendar except I had a 2.5 hour bike ride that I was going to go do. Mm-hmm. I get a call. Oh, I had to take dinner to some family friends. I get a call, and he's like, this is Scott. I'm at the house. There are 10 police officers, all the neighbors, and children, and child protective services, and code enforcement. I need you to come now. I don't care what the price is. I need you to buy it. Like, you came into my life at the right time. I need you to buy it. So I dropped everything I was doing. Happens to be when Jason is in Houston for a podcast. Mm-hmm. So I go down there, and I'm like, before I hang up, I'm like, don't let code enforcement board it for you. They're going to charge you a fortune. I will come down there. I'm calling my handyman now. We'll meet you down at the property and fix it. So we go down there. I'm on the phone with the handyman. He's like, okay, I'm at a job. I'm going to leave right now. I'm going to go to this Home Depot. And how many boards do you need? I'm like, okay, it's a big house, like a lot. So to spare us the details, I get down there and I pull up, and he's 100% right. It's cops, neighbors,
mayhem,
city council member, code enforcement, child protective services, like detectives, everything. And I'm like, I get out, and the owner's sitting on the curb, and I go, what happened? And he goes, I don't know. I was walking by the house on my way back from Cup of Joy or wherever, and I saw the cops, so I walked over. And I was like, okay, weird. So I walk up to code enforcement, and they go, hi, you must be the new owner. I'm like, no, I'm Scott Farrow, different Scott. And he goes, oh, well, that Scott just told me you own the house now. And I said, okay, I don't, but talk to me like I do. And he goes, so is the seller giving you ownership of the house? And I said, I guess. Like, what do you need? Code enforcement walks me around. Hey, there was fentanyl in the house. 3 guys already got picked up for gun charges. These 3 women appear to be prostitutes. They're going to walk the streets. All these 9 children are getting taken by CPS. The house is condemned. I've already red tagged it, and I need you to have it completely secured by nightfall. And August, it's sunlight until mid 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, my handyman's already getting boards at Home Depot right now. And he goes, okay, well, I don't know if you had to deal with code enforcement before. And I'm like, sadly, I have. And he goes, we need 5/8 plywood all around the front, all around the back. At least the first floor has to be done tonight. I will give you some credence. If the second floor is not done tonight, that's okay. When my team comes by tomorrow, if they see the first floor is boarded, that's enough for tonight.
Cool.
I want the pool drained now. Oh, by the way, PG&E just pulled up. They're pulling the panel. Anybody who's done a flip, panels take like 8 months to get installed right now.
Yeah.
So that just incurred a ton of fees.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of how I walked into the situation after meeting this guy once and really having no clue about the property.
Dude, I'm going to piggyback on what you said at the very beginning of the podcast.
About Mac?
I feel... No, that would have been the cherry on top, though. Just a ton of dog shit in the house, wouldn't it, bro?
It would have fit right in.
I feel like the majority of people listening to the podcast know this. For those of you who don't, obviously it seems like common sense, but we see, when we think about a flip or renovating a house and making it all pretty and nice, obviously, the normal cliche is looking at shit like on HGTV, right? Where you get all of the work being done, but you get none of the story pre-work starting, right? And all of this heavy lifting, all of this shit show going on, dealing with all of these things in a really, like you said, in a really just overall really sad and just bad situation, right? All of the legwork needing to get done before even having a house that's ready to go, ready to start getting in there and demoing, right? And I think, like you said, and you've shared it a lot that I've seen recently on even your Instagram stories too, which is that investors and flippers in particular can get a really bad rap from the community, right? Because, they're going in there, you're just throwing on some paint on the baseboards and, painting over holes, and you're turning around and you're making a fat ass profit, right? And again, just like in anything, there's bad apples, right, out there. But I think the really important thing to keep in mind is a house like this, there is really no scenario in which it makes sense to go about the traditional way of selling your home, which is listing it on the open market, right? You have a seller and multiple other stakeholders just really in a state of distress, right? All of these other players, the city councilmen, detectives, the police, all of these things, to where us being able to provide that value to step in and help solve people's problems, especially when they are, like you said, sometimes one of the worst moments of their lives.
It gets worse for the seller.
And
the story only gets worse.
And I think that's just important as we continue the story, is the whole purpose of what we do is to provide value and solve problems. Like we're in the business of helping people, and I think this, in its essence, is again in a really unfortunate situation. But the overall, thing taken away from this is being able to help and provide value in a scenario where it feels, if I was the seller, like the sky was absolutely falling and my world is imploding in.
This was the pinnacle moment of 30 years of distress, right? This house had been a problem house. When I posted it on Instagram, I posted a quick story just with the video of the cop cars and the house getting boarded. I probably had 30 people go, "Oh, this is the house on Yale." Everybody knows about this house. I mean, there was no secret this house was a problem. So after talking with the owner and saying, "Look, they're treating me like the new owner. I don't have a signed contract with you. I'm a licensed agent. I'm not going to break my code of ethics of behaving like an owner if I'm not. I will buy the house from you, but we do need to figure this out today because I'm shelling out a ton of cash right now to make sure that you are in a better spot. And I don't want you to feel like I'm putting pressure on you. You have to make a wise decision, but you don't have the money to fix the house right now. And code enforcement is telling me that they're going to have a $30 fine or $30,000 fine on the house by tomorrow if this doesn't get started tonight." And I said, "I'm going to shell out $6,000 right now." I think I ended up shelling out $1,500 that night just to get boards and paying my handyman, which shout out to my handyman, Greg. I think it's extra mile, trash out, and hauling. Greg showed up, Johnny on the spot, starts working on it. He, his cousin, and his sister he was picking up from school. And I'm not allowed to go in the house. Code enforcement's like, "You're not allowed in. There's fentanyl in the home. The first floor is flooded. One of the kids must have turned on a sink. The plumbing's all broken. It flooded the first floor. Well, talking with Scott, I'm like, dude, how did they know to come? And he goes, I don't know, because they said it's flooding, but how would they have known that it was flooding without a 911 call? We come to the conclusion, like, we're talking to every cop, every detective. Tell me what's going on. Mm-hmm. How did you know to send 10 cops here? And while we're doing that, another dude walks up and asks to use the bathroom. One of the detectives knows him by name and goes, sit down right now. Goes over. That guy has drugs and a gun on him. Has a warrant out for felony gun charges. He gets picked up and taken. At this point, all the kids are being taken by CPS. I'm an intrinsically, like, very caring person. Mm-hmm. And, like, this had to have been the most emotionally wearing day of, like, that I've had in work. Because I'm seeing kids being taken. I'm seeing guys getting thrown in jail. I see women getting sent onto the street, which I think is not right. You know, I'm trying to think, like, who can I even help here outside of just Scott? Like, there's a lot of people having the worst day of their life right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, at that point, I got there at 3:15. I had to go take dinner to a family that just had a newborn at 5. I'd already ordered the food. And so I go pick it up, take them the food. I tell them what's going on. I have to leave. I go back to the house. I end up being there until 9 o'clock at night. And somewhere in the middle of that is when I called you. Jason's out of town. I'm having issues getting Home Depot to take my card over the phone.
I remember that.
I'm having all these entities, like, these are your list of things that you have to do before we can, you know, clear you. Fresno PD is like, this is our 3rd visit to the house this week. You're going to have more. Here's, you know, our contact for our district, where there's only, you know, 5 cops in this area. Some of them gave me their personal cells and were like, if I'm not on duty, you can text me and I will send somebody to your house because this is a problem house. I don't want it to burn. And, you know, come to the end of it, you know, I turned to Scott and he had just walked me over to all the neighbors and introduced me to all the neighbors. And they demanded my business card. So now they have my DRE license. They have all these things where I'm claiming to be the owner of a problem property. You know, they could write up a complaint to the DRE about me. I don't know what they'd write it up about, but people are petty, and I don't want the DRE to be mad at me because an owner is telling them I'm the owner, and I'm explaining to them that I'm not the owner. We're going to be opening escrow, and I'll be the owner in a week. But then there's some kind of he said, she said situation. So
it's kind of being caught in no man's land, right? When technically in escrow, right? If you are the seller and you're selling your home and you accept an offer from a buyer, they are not the owner just yet. You've accepted their offer to purchase the home.
You are still the person that has all the liability.
All the liability.
And he doesn't have insurance on the house, by the way. I'm like, dude, this house could burn any minute. This thing is like, you need to get insurance now. So we hadn't even talked price at this point. I'm already out thousands of dollars. I've already talked to all these people. I have all this stuff. And we haven't even talked about price. And when I pulled up, I had prefaced it like, my offer is going to be a lot lower than you want. And he goes, I don't care what the price is. This needs to get done. Okay, fine, great. So I walk back to him and I go, look, in full transparency, I want you to know I don't want to take advantage of this situation. And I want you to know I'm going to pay you the highest price. I am approved to pay you. At 1 o'clock, Jason and I had said we'd pay $190. Prior to getting this phone call, prior to any of this, close in a week, that was our deal. Well, I'm now told that there's flooding. The panel is gone. The pool needs to get drained, which just got pebble teched 2 years ago. So it's in good shape. So I didn't budget anything for the pool. And I have potentially a $30,000 fine from code enforcement that could hit if they just decided they want to cause mayhem. Mm-hmm. Another person to shout out. George, with Fresno Code Enforcement, I owe you a lot. You were super helpful. You worked with me. You give Code Enforcement a great name. I do not like Code Enforcement, but if you ever get George, he is super reasonable. Do what he asks, and he will do what he said he will do. So shout out George. I walk back to the car with the seller, and I go, I would have paid you $190 4 hours ago. That was what I was approved to pay you. Here's what I hear now. I tell him what I hear. I can't go in the house. I can't verify it. And I go, I'm buying this thing now without getting to verify any of the damage. The first floor alone to fix that could be more than $40,000. Mm-hmm. The pool alone could cause 10,000 in damage. The panel alone is going to cost me 4 extra months of holding time. And, you know, I have a potential $30,000 fine from code enforcement. I said, I need a discount. And he goes, okay, what price? And I say, $150. That's what I can afford to offer you. And he goes, okay. So I walked through the whole contract with him like I would any seller that wasn't in this situation. And I go, do you fully understand what you're signing up for? Once you sign this, there's no going back. I'm going to perform at $150, but you can't back out. And he goes, I understand. So we get to the signing line and I go, just to confirm, I'm paying $150. We're closing in 7 days. And he goes, $150? You said $190. And I go, Scott, I told you $190 was a few hours ago. We had a 20-minute conversation about why it's lower now. I can only offer you $150. If your number is $190, I'm sorry, but I have to walk. I will work to get that money back from you for the boards and whatnot, but you're going to have to tell all the neighbors that you still own the house. And he goes, fine, $150 it is. The price is the price. I told you any price. I'll honor that. We sign. Scott leaves. I'm there until 8 or 9. I still have my bike ride to do. I get home exhausted at this point, do my bike ride, and the whole time all I can think about is just like, damn, I feel like I took advantage of this guy. Like, I know that I gave him the very best price I can afford to offer, but I feel horrible. And this is where having a spouse that's supportive and that's morally upright is helpful. She reminded me, like, run the numbers right now in front of me, and the numbers penciled that we made $40,000 if we do this flip at $150. And she goes, you would not take this deal in any other circumstance if you didn't feel bad for this guy. And she goes, think about X, Y, and Z people that we had recently talked about that would have taken full advantage and pressed all the way down to maybe 50,000 on the house. And he would have had to sign it. I mean, this guy really had no other option. And she goes, all you can do is offer a price that you're allowed to pay. You know, I work with Jason. Jason and I have to split profits. I can't volunteer to take on a project that's going to take thousands of man hours, tons of money, and has a ton of risk with no upside. We're in a business. We're not a nonprofit. And that took a while to kind of get used to. You know, I didn't feel great about the situation. I was obviously very disturbed seeing the kids be taken. I felt like they were the biggest victims in this situation.
Yeah.
But that's the hard part about the job, is that when you're here to save the day, it means that the day was going really bad.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, I mean, obviously, first time you're hearing about this deal is Monday. Tuesday comes around. You're there for, dude, the full half day.
5.5 hours. And then that was including me driving to Chico's and dropping off the food real quick.
And then coming back. So you end the night with getting a signed contract. I assume escrow's open the next day. Escrow period is a week, right? How does the escrow period go? Is everything
horrible? That was the hardest week of an escrow I've ever seen. We had the money on day one. Like, we wanted to get that deal done ASAP.
Like, sooner than in 20, however soon escrow could do it, you guys wanted to do it.
Wednesday comes around, I reach out to code enforcement, Fresno Police Department, every entity that told me I needed to contact them.
Yeah.
I gave them my contact, Jason's contact, and our assistant's contact. I said, we need to know everything we can know about the property in escrow because we're buying it in a week.
Yep.
In the meantime, we already are getting bids to trash it all out ASAP. So Greg, who had done the boarding, goes, dude, I'll trash this thing out. I'll be the best price. And I'm like, I 100% believe it. Also, you did me a huge solid just coming here at a moment's notice and working until 9 o'clock at night. And he goes and gives us a quote. I think it was like $6,000, which was super reasonable for the amount of work there was. We got another quote for 15. So that tells you how big of a difference. So while we're waiting to get the trash out bid and done, I'm sitting there and I'm like, what the hell is going on? I'm getting calls every day from Fresno Police Department to come down to the house. And they're like, we need to give ownership of the property back over to you. We can't just kick somebody out and then leave it empty. So I'm going back every day with Greg and we're having to board it up. Mm-hmm. And so we had 6 police phone calls at all hours of the day. The seller in the middle of all this. So date night's Wednesday, right? So this is the 1 week mark. We close that day. He calls me at 5 o'clock. I'm thinking he's calling it, great, we're done. I'm happy. And I had heard that he wasn't looking that good. And I guess what had happened was in the middle of escrow, one of the tenants who's related to him broke into his primary residence, beat him up, and then he got bit by a brown recluse. And so I should probably send Jonathan the freaking photo. I don't know. I think that's against HIPAA. But dude, his arm had swollen up. He almost died in the middle of escrow. If that had happened, everything's fucked. It wasn't in a trust. It would have gone through probate.
Yeah.
The house would have burned down in probate. And so, seller's having the worst time of his life. He got beat up.
House broken into. Assaulted.
His house got trashed. His car was stolen.
Bitten by a brown
recluse.
On the verge of death.
Literally in the hospital. Title and escrow. I've never in my life had a title or escrow officer call me and say, what happened to this seller? And then say, I think he may be dead. And I'm like, what? And they're like, we told him he needed to go to the hospital and he wouldn't. When he came in for his final signing, we debated calling 911 to have an ambulance pick him up. But he fought us and said that he won't. And we told him, go to the bank, deposit the check because your family member will steal this check from you. The second you deposit it directly into your account, call 911 at the bank and take an ambulance, right? He wouldn't do it. He ended up self-admitting himself, almost died, right? I already said that. And ghosts me for like 2 weeks. And I'm like, I literally was driving down to do a wellness check on him because I didn't know where his house was. So I look it up and I'm like, I'm going to go knock on the door. And Jason's like, go knock on the door because he could have been killed. He could have, he had health issues in escrow, according to the officers. Mm-hmm. Like, if he is not responding, we do need to call the police. So I'm driving down there and he sends me the photo of his arm and is like, I'm in the hospital. I'm like, thank God you're alive. I literally thought you were dead. Can I bring you anything? No, I'm all good, whatever.
Oh
and so that was the escrow period. That was all the craziness. So then we end up closing on the house, right? At that point, we're like, okay, the next step is to get it bid out. Again, this is a huge project. So we get our best contractor. We meet out at the house. He's walking through it with us, and we're talking through what we think it's worth, what we thought it was going to cost to rehab it, what we're hoping to make. And he turns to us after we've walked the whole house, and he goes, I would love to do this whole project for you, but I'm literally doing the kitchen for the neighbor across the street, and it's $100,000 for his kitchen. He was like, this is going to be many, many six figures. And he goes, I don't think you're going to make even 40,000. He goes, if I were in your shoes, I would list it. He goes, I would list it as is. I think there will be a homeowner who's got money, who wants to live in the area, who will buy it, and they'll fix it up exactly how they want. And you guys won't be in a position where you're set to possibly lose money if this market changes. And Jason and I looked at ourselves and we were like, well, this was such an interesting deal. We can make so much content. We wanted to fix it and flip it because it's in a really cool area that we both went to community college right next to. To us, it was like an opportunity to like really make something cool. But when your contractor is saying, do not do this, you will lose money, you're like, what other option do you have?
Yeah.
And so at that point, Jason and I kind of put our heads together and we said, well, I mean, we wanted to flip it. This is what we wanted to do. But we've had these experiences where this contractor told us that it's going to be more than we think, and it always has. He knows something we don't know, right? He crawled the foundation. He crawled, everything that I didn't get to look at. And he said, the foundation looks good. This looks good. But like this item, this item, this item, this item, this item, this item. He's like, dude, this is going to be like probably almost, 200, 250,000. And he said, I could easily see this going to 300,000 based on the way that you guys like to do stuff. So he was like, a homeowner could do this for a lot cheaper because they're going to be patient and you guys want to get this done quick. And so the whole time we're dealing with contracting it, to get it cleaned out, we get that information and we looked at ourselves and we just said, we're just going to list it. And if we don't get an offer we like, we're just going to fix it up ourselves. because it's going to be fun.
And prior to listing, obviously you guys do, the $6,000 or $7,000 trash out, clean out. I assume taking care of draining the pool because that was something that code enforcement
I think we were $8,000
needed.
at that point.
Yeah, about $8,000 to $10,000 in after the plywood, doing everything
to just get code enforcement off our back.
Yeah, just to get it to even listable condition, if that's even
I forgot
what you could call it.
Not really listable, as is Hill.
Yeah.
I forgot to even mention, at one point, the backyard neighbor called the police, and the police go, you need to go talk to him. And I'm like, what the hell is your job then? I didn't say that because they've been so cool to me. And I go, okay, yes, sir, I'll go do it. I go over there. Apparently, the squatters in our house took gas cans filled with gasoline and got on his roof. And he has a cabin in Shaver that he was about to leave to. And he said, I have to stay here now, and I have to pay $2,000 to get a security system because I'm scared. I live here alone. I'm an old guy. And I'm like, oh my God. So I have all these neighbors, city councilmen, all these people are up me, right? I'm getting calls from neighbors every single day. There's somebody there. Yeah, that's my handyman. Our handyman happens to be black. And all of the squatters happen to be Hispanic. And I'm like, is it a tall black dude wearing a bright yellow shirt with a work truck? And they go, yeah. And I go, that's my guy. If you see him, don't call me. If you see somebody else, you can call me. And I think Greg was getting annoyed by getting called out so much too. So it's like, I feel bad for him because he's not getting paid to drive from where he lives out there. He's only getting paid to check on the house if there's problems.
Yeah.
So, we get to that point. Jason and I talked to him. We said, we're just going to list this thing for way more than we expect to make in hopes that whoever wants the discount is going to come in low. So we listed the house for $279. And we said, there's a world where somebody could pay us that, but likely we're going to end up making somewhere less than that. And of course, anybody listening to this goes, yeah, to make $100,000 versus $40,000 with 8 to 10 months of work, anybody would do the $100,000, right? That's the benefit of solving a lot of problems at the drop of a hat. So we listed the house and we ended up getting like 40 something offers. Morgan said, by far, to this day, it's the hardest listing she's ever had with the amount of interactions. I had people from all over social media.
I'd be ripping my hair out, dude. Could you imagine? I mean, we're both licensed. We've dealt with listings during COVID and getting a ton of stuff.
We put the notes, code enforcement, police department.
Gosh, dude.
All these things that we're aware of. We never actually, there was like the detective that was there told me that code enforcement was speaking out of line when they said there was fentanyl there. They said the detective said that there's likely something there, but he said there's no evidence that would tell me that I can for sure tell you that.
Yeah.
So there was some hearsay stuff that we had to disclose that wasn't necessarily like for fact.
Yeah.
But we did everything we could to make sure anybody buying this thing knew what kind of a headache they were getting into.
Yeah.
And we still got 40 something offers. And we had a lot of low balls, but we had a lot that were over asking.
Solid. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we had 10 over 300,000. And at that point, Jason and I were like, this is the right decision. There's absolutely no world, no matter how much we want to do this deal, to risk making 40,000 versus a guaranteed 100,000+. Mm-hmm. So we accepted an escrow. That buyer turned out to be a really big headache. They did a home inspection. It was a mom and a daughter who had the cash to live in it. The mom really didn't want the house. The daughter really did, but she needed mom's help. The home inspector did his report. It was like almost 150 pages long. He was like, everything's broken, which clarified to us exactly what we had already disclosed that we knew about.
That anybody could probably see walking
we gave like code enforcement stuff and all that. But the buyer had gotten into contract at $315, and escrow tried to play hardball and ask for a $50,000 price reduction. And we said, look, in good faith, we'll give you $7,500, but like, we're not like, we have 7 other offers within 5,000. We're giving you $2,500 less than their offer. And we know those people personally. We only went with you because we wanted it to go to a homeowner, not a flipper. Mm-hmm. And they took the $7,500. So, I mean, at the end of it all, we sold it for $307,500. We paid commissions and closing costs, and then $8,000 in repairs, plus the $150 purchase price. I think we made in the ballpark of like 130,000, 125,000.
Have you driven by the house since?
Fuck no. I'm still getting calls. I was telling Jonathan about this before, our videographer. I'm getting calls still from the tenants that are in prison because since this whole thing transpired, sellers often have seller's remorse about their decisions, right? And this is a hard topic, actually. It's a good thing to kind of wrap up the podcast with a short discussion on. Nobody's going to feel good selling the house for $150,000 and then seeing somebody immediately list it and sell it for $300,000. You feel like you got duped, right? But the reason the house was in the position it was in was because there was 30 years of bad decision making, and I had no play in any of those decisions. And unfortunately, it costs me a lot of risk to take on a house like that. And sometimes we've lost our ass doing that, and you know that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we make a lot of money. And this was a cool story because we ended up making a lot, and it was worth all of the emotional headache and trauma and, you know, issues. Like, I talked to my therapist about this guy because I was just like so beat up about the situation. And even my therapist was like, you know, you can't control what other people do. And if you were honest with them and you paid really what you can pay, you have no reason to feel upset. Just because you make money that's like part of your business model. Yeah,
I've had this conversation a couple times. I don't know. It's kind of weird. It's popped up multiple times in the past week or two where, as we wrap up, it's looking at...
We got a couple minutes.
Looking at two different things, right? The controllables and the uncontrollables, right? And as we're dealing with emotions, as we're dealing with relationships, as we're dealing with time, as we're dealing with money, right? A lot of things can go back and forth like that. We can get caught up ourselves in a lot of that and either be beating ourselves up, you know, getting caught in a bunch of different things. But it's looking at it. Okay, is this a controllable? Can I control how open and honest I am? Yes. Can I control how respectful I am? Yes. Can I control how empathetic I am to, you know, what's a controllable versus what's an uncontrollable? Can I dictate how code enforcement, you know, if they decided to come and do the 30,000, right? If you did everything in your power and listened to them to do the boarding and all that stuff, and yet they still came and decided to fine $30,000, right? It's an uncontrollable. We can't control other people's thoughts, emotions, how they respond, as long as we are in the control of doing business the right way, having the head right on our shoulders, being open, honest, respectful, and doing business the right way. I think it's a good refresher and a good reminder as we especially head into this season of, you know, like grind time. I think it's, you know,
a little bit of turmoil.
Yeah. I think these situations,
I've dealt with a few since
and I think they're going to be more rampant,
prevalent.
Exactly. As we kind of head into, this transition into the new year.
The seller obviously had some frustration because he wouldn't respond to my text or calls to check in on his health, right? That was kind of the first sign. And I said, you know, it's normal for a seller to be upset when they see somebody list a house right after they sold it. Then the home inspector reported back and through the grapevine got to me that the seller showed up during the home inspection and absolutely berated my character, which I took very personally, and I need to learn not to, but called me a liar, a thief, all these things. And the home inspector actually knows me. And the home inspector apparently almost fought the seller over the comment. So it couldn't have been just some little offhand comment, and tried to derail our escrow. And, you know, Jason and I got pretty frustrated. We were like, you know, we just did a lot for you simply because we wanted to help out. Yeah, we made the offer come to an agreement, but like we spent the money before we had even talked about price. We understood that we could lose $8,000 on this before we even had gotten there. Mm-hmm. And, you know, then all of a sudden I start getting calls from the people that got kicked out, and they're like, we want all our crap. And I'm like, code enforcement required me to trash everything out. Like, if you have beef, you can call code enforcement, but like the house got condemned. Nobody was allowed back inside, only to trash out property. I talked with the seller about what he wanted to keep. I have photos that I sent him along with text threads with evidence that he was looking at it. And he said, go. And so that stuff's all gone. I don't have any control on where it's at. I'm not the owner of the business. I follow orders from code enforcement. And I'm still like, just 2 weeks ago, I got a call from a phone number in prison. This is so-and-so, just a first name. I used to live at that house on Yale. I want my car back. And I'm going to get out of prison in December. And I'm going to come find you. And I'm going to come talk to you. If you're watching the video, look at me, dude. I'm 170 pounds. I'm not a gangster. I've never claimed to fucking want to be in an altercation. I take that as a threat. You're not going to come text me and say you're going to come find me. My shit's all on public, like online. You can find my address quick. That's a threat. I'm not going to take that lightly. And he said, yeah, Scott, the old owner, told me that you knew where it's at. I'm going to get that car back. So I call the trash out guy. Trash out guy calls the car guy. Car guy calls that phone number. Tells him, hey, car's gone, man. Car guy's dealt with this, right? These guys hauling cars off of properties. This can't be the first time. And we'll see what happens. I have a feeling I'm going to have a conversation, right? But, I think I have some frustration to deal with the seller because I felt like I did something right. I dealt with some internal turmoil about, did I do the right thing? And all the people around me that have no money to gain from that deal going well.
Yeah.
They're all saying, hey, you did the right thing. So I feel like that's just part of the business, is learning how to deal with people when they get upset, right? They want somebody to blame. It's hard to take the blame on themselves for making 30 years of bad decisions.
100%. Dude, what a freaking whirlwind of a deal review,
like I said, dude, it's like a fever dream. Hard to remember all the details.
Oh my gosh. And I mean, some of it, even some people might be like, dude, like there's no way, no way. But no, like this is not even,
this isn't hyperbole at all.
We have so many stories, so many things, so many other deals we can break down, dude. This is why I love doing these, because it kind of you pull back the curtain on, a lot of this stuff that a lot of people don't get to see. I know we try to do a good job of pulling back that curtain and sharing both the positive, negative, everything in between on social media, but a lot of people don't. So that's why I like these deal reviews, dude. We get to pull back the curtain, talk in more detail than just a quick story on Instagram. So, dude, I'm looking forward to the next deal review. What a freaking crazy deal, man.
And if you heard this podcast, I hope that you understand, by no means am I trying to slander you or make you sound like a bad guy. You've got your own frustrations. Everybody does. Mistakes were made. I'm glad that you're out of the position you are in. I'm glad that you lived through the spider bite. I hope that you're not dealing with the problems that you are with the tenants or family members. But, this is where it's at, and I'm glad that it all worked out.
We'll wrap it up on that. Guys, thank you for tuning in to the Pursuit of Property podcast. We will be back next week. Of course, as always, we're a little biased, but we've got some great episodes coming up and lined up. And so stay tuned. We'll see you next Thursday, 11 a.m.
Boom.